Hello, everybody. Welcome to Game Audio Hour number 76. This is our weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas, the latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find your in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. Mike, how's your cat?
The cat is doing really well. This is Cloud the cat. He is approximately 500,000 pounds and very content all the time. So there's definitely a trade-off there for health and quality of life. How are you doing, Kyle?
Oh, sadly, your webcam gave out on you right when you were showing the cat.
That's how much mass the cat has.
Yeah, let's see.
Here's a much slower, dramatic reveal.
Bum bum.
Wow.
The cat is out cold. Oh, Vince, do you have a cat?
I do not. The studio apartment that I'm in currently does not allow cats. And actually, my girlfriend's cat, she stays over at her old apartment, and she goes back and takes care of it every now and then. But I do like cats. I'm very much a cat person. Maybe one of these days.
Yeah. Alex, how about you?
I am definitely a cat person. I'm not a dog person. I've never really, I don't know, it's like I just never kind of felt super comfortable with dogs for some reason. But cats I love.
Yeah, I like cats too.
And,
but my allergies do not. So, of four,
I should just.
Oh, go ahead.
I should just apologize. I'm actually trying out Opera browser. I've been on Opera browser for the past 2 weeks.
Jeez.
So if I suddenly cut out in the middle of the show, then it's not my fault. It's Opera's fault.
Welcome to 1998.
Wow.
Yeah, just kind of seeing what it's about. It's been a while, and I don't know. I used to use Firefox. I've been using Firefox for ages and ages, and just thought I'd try something different. So here we are. This is Opera.
Well, the quality is fantastic.
Yes, well, you know, just like DAW's changed the sound of your mixes, as we know, you know, and Ableton sounds shit, where, you know, Pro Tools sounds warmer to me, Pro Tools, than Ableton, which sounds kind of cold and harsh. Vince is doing a facepalm.
Unbelievable. I think we just lost all of our credibility.
Anyway, I am well. How are you, Kyle?
I'm good. But I noticed that of the four of us, there's only one of us with a cat. So that makes Mike the most superior of the game audio crew here, because cats have to come with game audio.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Mike?
I'll be releasing a sound library based on the personal sounds of this cat, which are limited to a kind of satisfied grunt whenever he is fed. So for those of you who have that specific Foley need for your games, just send me an email and I'll keep you in the loop on the upcoming release.
Cloud 2.0 sound library.
Exactly.
So, guys, there's been quite a ruckus in the voiceover department of game audio, and really Hollywood as a whole, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Who would like to do that recap? Can Vince, do you have all the news to share?
Yeah, I think I've got it basically.
Plus, you've got the awesome mic.
Oh, well, yeah. So I guess I'm the closest to a voiceover actor here with my awesome mic. Not so awesome voice, but I'll do my best. So SAG-AFTRA, the actors union, they sent a mail out in the last few weeks to the various union members saying, hey, would you authorize us to actually make a strike happen against the agreement that is currently expired, but still the grandfathered working agreement between SAG-AFTRA, all those union VOs, and the video game industry. And there are a whole bunch of issues on the table for that. And we've been seeing it on various articles and video game websites, as well as on Twitter. I think it's #PerformanceMatters for people that want to voice how much they care about voice actors in their video games. And it's kind of tough, though, seeing all these tweets that are saying, yeah, performance matters, but it's far more than can actually be fit in a 140-character tweet. Probably the biggest thing that people latch onto once they get past performance matters is this whole idea of residuals. And union actors want residuals, And the game developers are saying, no, of course union actors shouldn't get residuals. But of course, that is still just the first layer. There
Wait
are
a
other...
moment. Question.
Yes.
Question,
Yes.
Mr. Diamante.
What's up, Alex?
Could you just cover, for those of us who are not familiar with the deeper financial aspects of game publishing and game release, what is a residual?
Yeah, so residuals are actually pretty common elsewhere in the entertainment industry. So if you're a union actor, it's kind of expected that you're not always constantly working throughout the year. So in the various agreements, when you're on radio, when you're on TV, or in a film, you will get payment on the back end based on the performance of these films, TV shows, and the like in media. You know, the show comes on again on TV, you're going to get some more back-end payment in addition to the initial upfront contract that you had signed to be the actor for this thing. Currently, that's not in place in the video game world. And that's one of the issues. Currently, the easiest issue to latch onto, because it's such a big thing. Residuals, while they are common in the movie and TV industry, are not common at all among video game developers. So there's this very much an us versus them kind of vibe going on with developers saying, why should voiceover actors get residuals when I, as a programmer or an artist or a designer, we don't get residuals on the stuff that we've worked on? Like, I didn't have residuals when I did the music for Flower, for example, and that's probably the most high-profile thing I've done, and that was with big old publisher Sony. And so should I want union voice actors actually getting these residuals as well? Now, again, this is only just one of the points, but it's certainly the big one that a lot of people are latching onto right now.
So the voice actors have a union, and the game voice actors have to be in that union or not?
No, you don't have to be in the union in order to get union work. Actually, in LA, there are a whole lot of people who are non-union, who have been non-union for years and years, and have had continuous work, especially in video games and animation. I've done a few video games that were union voice acting gigs, but a whole lot of gigs that I've done where I was an audio director or sound implementer, I was working with voiceover actors who were non-union most of the time.
What's I guess the next obvious question is, what's the benefit for a voice actor in joining the union?
Being a union voice actor is sort of a guarantee that you are of a particularly high quality. Not everyone can be a union voice actor. You have to have gone through, I guess, the process. You have to have shown that you are really quite a good talent who can hit the marks very quickly and very efficiently. There are quite a few non-union voice actors who have sort of stumbled their way through the field, and they get their gigs and they do okay on it. But the general impression out there is that if you get a union voice actor, he or she is going to be of a much higher caliber than your typical non-union voice actor.
Will non-union voice actors benefit from the strike if it's a successful change to getting residuals?
Well, I think that's the thing. There are far more things at stake than just the residuals. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest thing because it's like, oh, residuals, back-end payment, and that in and of itself is such a polarizing thing. But there are other issues that have been brought up by other people. Again, it's hard to find these in tweets, but let's see. I have a list of some things here. Here's an example. Video game developers, publishers that employ voice actors, one of the things that they are hoping for in the next agreement is that they would be able to fine you up to $2,500 if you show up late or are not, quote, attentive to the services for which you have been engaged, unquote. which is a pretty significant amount of money considering most union VO guys don't make $2,500 a day doing any of these gigs, at least not with the 3-year-old agreement that is currently expired. Typically you're getting, if you, whether you're union or non-union or not, I'd like to make sure that voice actors are paid a pretty decent sum. So if they're doing 3 to 6 hours of work in the studio, I'm going to give them at least $600, $700, maybe $1,200, $1,300. That's a good amount to give to a voice actor, in my opinion. And I like to, even if I'm hiring someone who's non-union, I try to give them a decent amount. But finding $2,500 for, I'm gonna check my Twitter really quickly, or hey, I'm a union voice actor and this is a really cool production. I'm sure that these guys would benefit from a little bit of promotion on my Twitter, saying, hey, I'm in the voice studio doing some work, and a producer could decide that that is actually being inattentive to the services which they've been engaged. That seems pretty extreme. Another fine here, our employers want to be able to fine the union $50,000 to $100,000 if your franchised agent doesn't send you out on certain auditions. So not just the big gigs where you're the lead or some major supporting character, but atmospheric voices, or just 1 hour, one voice sessions where you have to do just some minor characters, maybe 2 or 3 pages worth of lines for that.
So that one confused me. So explain who's going to sue whom in that one?
Well, it's not a suit. It would just be a fine. That would be stipulated in the contract. It would be the video game publisher or developer suing the union themselves. If they agree to be a union production, then they trust that the union is going to do certain things, establish certain things about the conduct of their union voice actors. If that doesn't happen, they can find the union themselves.
Okay, so the developer's saying that we should get a shot, if there's a union, of all of your top quality, even if we have a small thing for them to do. And if you don't send your top quality VO for our request to do a 1 hour grunting sergeant, then we have the right to fine you for not doing that. Is that what it's saying?
Basically, yes.
Oh, boy. But to see the union, this is so ugly, isn't it?
Some of these stipulations definitely seem to be less productive than others. I think the attentiveness requirement would really be a problem if put into practice. And if you think about the reality of a VO session, I think that would be really clear. For one thing, attentiveness can't really be quantified. It could bust down to a he said, she said scenario where a producer accuses talent of not being attentive, and the talent didn't know that he or she was being judged that way, and it could be very hard to actually make your case. But more fundamentally, imagine the burden on a VO actor who's coming into a scenario, trying to learn a character very quickly, trying to come up with some mannerisms and flesh out a character, and really committing their whole attention span to this task, along with all the technical things like avoiding p-pops and lip smacks and all that stuff that they have to essentially do on autopilot. And given that emotional, psychological, and attentional load, imagine the additional burden of part of your brain going, am I being attentive enough right now? And having to self-monitor so that you meet some not very clearly defined criteria of paying attention. So while I understand the idea behind that kind of stipulation, I think it would be really unfortunate if something that clumsy were interjected into the working process in a VO session.
It seems really, the whole idea of attentiveness in a session seems really weird to me, because if you think about it, the VO actor, him or herself, it's in their best interest to give their full effort. So why would there need to be, the actor being an independent professional would know that if I'm just sort of, I don't feel like recording right now, I need to rest my voice, I'm just going to sit back here and have a coffee, you just do something else while you're waiting. they would know that that kind of behavior is not going to get them called back the second time. So obviously it's in their own interests to conduct themselves in a professional way. So it just seems really, really bizarre that you would even need such a stipulation like that.
It's also, a director's got to run a VO shoot, and if you become a director who's got a reputation of turning people in for not paying attention, you're going to find yourself without a job. Because if I was a studio, wouldn't want that trouble of trying to find good talent because the voiceover director that we're using has a bad reputation.
Is there such a thing as this attentiveness thing? Is there such a thing with session musicians who play on like pop music recordings and stuff like that? So I can't imagine that. Oh, we're going to get like Steve Gadd to come and do our drums for us. But Steve, he's there and he's like tweeting instead of playing the drums for us. Can we have another go, Steve? No, he's busy on a call right now. You don't. Why? Firstly, Steve Gadd would never do that. Any professional session musician would never do that because they know that if I'm not doing a top job, they're not going to call me back the second time. So okay, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, okay, so as the producer, we're going to reserve the right to fine him because he's not being attentive enough. Well, I think it's punishment enough for himself if he's not being attentive enough just to not call him back the second time. So, like, why would they need some kind of stipulation to cover that situation? It seems really weird to me.
It may be regarded as kind of a self-defense mechanism against the difficulty of firing a union VO talent once you've hired someone and the difficulty of going through the talent pool. The intention may be, well, maybe now that we've got this person, they feel that they are inelastic, to put it in economics terms, or that they're irreplaceable, so they might start slacking. But I think the reality of the situation is that someone who developed, as you were saying, a reputation for that kind of behavior, it's not likely they would be in that position in the first place to command a high price and be on a high-paying gig. But even in the case where they could, like let's say Peter Dinklage starts dialing in performances as the robot from Destiny, again, I don't imagine that stipulation is going to have any motivating effect. You're not going to say, hey, Peter, you better perk up a little bit or we're going to slap you with a $5,000 fee. It's not going to work, and you're going to piss off your actor, and this is definitely a case where...
And Peter Dinklage isn't going to pay that fee, the union is. Right.
Right. So it's not really holding a sword of Damocles over his head individually either. So it sounds like something that's just poorly thought out, or maybe it's just meant to be kind of a gambling maneuver to try to counter some other stipulation that they don't like.
So are these what's in place now, you're saying, Vince, and therefore the voice actors are striking against it, these kind of...
Well, technically, the voice actors aren't striking. What they are currently voting on is whether to allow the union to authorize a strike being in place. And that requires a 75% vote, which may or may not happen. Mm-hmm. I think there's a good possibility that it could happen, but it could go the other way as well.
If they do strike, what are the conditions that is wanted by the voice actors? They want residuals? They want to get rid of these ridiculous rules like the one we just talked about?
There's that. Oh, what else? There's another point, which is limitations on stressful sessions. How much time can a voice actor actually put into a really vocally strenuous session? And we know that a lot of our video games are very aggressive games, people screaming and shouting, everything from super moves to bayonet in the chest, and that can actually be really quite tough to do. It's amazing to see voice actors actually do a session that is strenuous and actually hit it out of the park. And I can totally see why they wouldn't want to do that for more than 2 hours, because
so they want stunt pay for that, right? Is that what I was reading?
Yes, they want if things are happening for that, then actually I don't know if it's actually a different rate for a strenuous gig than a non-strenuous gig, but I think it was just an hour limitation on how many strenuous hours that you can put in the day. Let's see. Also, limitations on developers doing things like baits and switch. So, hey, you go into a gig and you think, oh, I'm going to be in the booth and doing these lines. It seems pretty cool. Hey, they even were really nice to send me the script beforehand, so I got to check these out. I think I'm going to knock these out. And then you go there and you're asked to put on some gear, wear a headset mic, and it turns out they're capturing not only your audio but also some mocap and performance capture stuff. It's like, and they do not want that to be the case. Make sure that allow for a different rate for that sort of work, as well as some sort of insurance and safety in place if that is going to be the case. More along the lines of what they have for motion capture and performance capture in the TV and animation world. Yeah, so there's quite a few things beyond just the big point, which is what I heard for the last week.
Yeah.
90% of stuff was, oh, we want residuals. But there's all this other stuff about not just money, but the quality of the work environment that they're going into.
So to make it fair for all kinds of performers, there are performers that can't get the protection of a union, like an in-house audio person who's composing his own music for the game or her own music for the game. So they would still not get residuals, while if this was successful, voice actors would get residuals. I can see such a big problem there. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, if it's not fair for everybody, somebody shouldn't push for it, because that's how things change. And where the in-house composer has health insurance and maybe a steady paycheck, the voice actor doesn't have either one of those things. So there's, things on both, there are issues on both sides of the line here, but man, I wish we could have a world where everybody who did some sort of performance would get residuals. I mean, game companies are walking away with billions, and certainly they're paying millions in salary, but I think that the disparity between what goes out and what comes in, especially with big companies, is fairly large. Now, that brings me to small companies who can't afford to pay very much, but still need good work done. And if they have to deal with any kind of fines or any kind of conditions that they can't meet, and I'm thinking about the one where you say they get a voice actor, but when the voice actor shows up, he or she is performing something different than what was expected. But a small company might not be able to employ enough people to set down this very rigid schedule that they think ahead and they set in place, and it will not change, and it will be in this building. And I mean, gosh, on both sides of this, my brain goes a good thing for it, a bad thing for it. I go back and forth this whole time about how people could benefit from it and how it could hurt the industry in other ways too.
Is this union strictly North America, or is it international union?
I think it's American, actually.
Does
the
it
Screen Actors Guild? Yeah.
Yeah.
Roughly how many members does it have who are voice actors? Do you know?
Ooh, that is a good question. Let's see. I'm gonna just go quickly. Oh, wait. Give me 5 seconds. SAG-AFTRA represents approximately 160,000 actors, announcers, broadcasters, journalists, dancers, DJs, news writers, news editors, etc., etc., etc. 160,000.
Wow.
But that's not just voice actors. That's the whole gamut, isn't it? Like, if we're just strictly talking voice actors, it would be a fraction of that, I imagine. Would it?
Yeah, I imagine so. But actors, I imagine, would be a lot of that. And I think one of the benefits of going through a union is being able to have access not just to, hey, the local community of voice actors. Hey, I live in LA. I know a whole bunch of non-union voice actors, but with SAG, there is that option to get someone really awesome. Like, oh, I didn't know that Christopher Lloyd is totally an option for my game, and possibly even relatively affordable for my low mid-budget game. It's totally a possibility that can work out, at least under the old, currently expired SAG-AFTRA agreement.
The vocal fatigue one sounds particularly interesting, because I think, any one of us who's done any kind of vocal like VO work ourselves, we all know that What's going on in the chat room? Everybody's leaving.
Oh, are they?
Must have been Vince.
Oh,
I told you, my voice is not great.
I'm not. Oh, there
I was going to say that. Yeah, I was going to say that. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, the vocal fatigue is particularly interesting because any one of us who's done simple VO work ourselves knows that the voice is a fragile thing, and I often wonder how is it the voice actors actually do that when they need to do those kinds of very, very strenuous performances? Of course, for the rest of the day, possibly the day after as well, their voice is going to be completely out of commission.
And a sore throat is one of the worst feelings. I hate having a sore throat.
Is there some kind of an equivalent? I guess the closest equivalent to this in a neighboring sector would be stunt actors, I suppose. Is that like the closest equivalent to this kind of physical fatigue affecting performance issue?
Mocap actors, that's a pain.
Maybe.
Where does mocap fall? Is that stunt?
I know under the AFM there are stipulated.
Maybe.
What'd you say, Mike?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
There goes Mike.
American Federation of...
We are losing the Michael Shapiro.
Did I drop out?
I think Mike was saying something about AFM.
Try it again, Mike.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
You are audible.
Okay, good. I was saying, indeed, it was under the AFM.
All right, we're going to have to cut to somebody else there, like a news agency that's got their reporter out in the field and the snow has fallen on his head, sadly.
It's that time of the day again when Mike falls into the past.
When his entire neighborhood goes online, I think, unfortunately for Mike. So, Vince, Mike was saying something about AFM?
I think he was saying something about that in order to make an analogy, but I'm not sure what that would be. But I'm going to jump over to one other thing, which is with any new agreement, I think SAG-AFTRA does want to acknowledge that there are differences between big budget games and small budget games.
Oh, okay.
So they have a FAQ online. It's talking about how most smaller and less popular games won't be affected by the residuals payment. We structured our proposals to trigger at 2 million units, the point we would regard a game as a blockbuster. We want the video game industry to keep growing. Growth equals more work for us. As for big games, we know the companies already budget for sales-based bonuses for many of their employees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a couple of things there. So 2 million units is an interesting number. It's possible to be a 2 million unit seller and be a huge hit, and it's also possible to be a 2 million unit seller and be a total dog in the marketplace. It's also possible to be...
Sorry. How hard is it for a small company to hit 2 million? Like an indie company that's just putting out their first game.
It depends. I mean, especially... back in the day when every title was a $40, $50, $60 title and you got 2 million units, it was very clear what that revenue was.
Yeah.
Nowadays, if you get 2 million new units, what does that mean? 2 million downloads on the Android Google Play Store, of which you're getting how much average revenue, if any revenue?
$30%.
Let me answer your question about how hard it is for a small company to hit 2 million units, Kyle. Very, 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 very hard.
I imagine so too.
And if you even if you are hitting 2 million units, it's unlikely that the revenue is a direct proportion of like 2 million. Oh, $2 million. No, it is. It's like. Yeah, well, I mean, mobile gaming is such a whole issue in itself, but
I've often
very,
wondered
very,
about
very
licensing, how like Wise and Fmod. I think Fmod has the same licensing structure now, or maybe Wise doesn't even have it anymore. Maybe Epic is still doing it, but where they're getting more money depending upon how many units you sell. How do they determine that? Because that same kind of metric must be what would be used in this case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I don't. The FAQ on the SAG-AFTRA site doesn't go into too much detail, but I think I would like to see more detail because 2 million units can be anything. So 2 million units on, say, a $2 or $3 App Store app. So, for example, one of my friends, Asher, he made a game called Threes, which has sold multi-million on the Apple App Store as well as Android.
Nice.
And there's voices for those characters that are in the game. It's a very simple puzzle game where you're just sliding numbers all around, and each of the actors has a simple character number. So the 3 has a few different grunts and utterances. The 6 has a few different grunts and utterances. Same with the 12, all the way up to 6,000 something. And when it comes to movies and film and TV shows, we kind of have a pretty strong idea of just how much of a factor the actor is in the overall production of the show, as well as the enjoyment that viewers get out of the show. Mm-hmm. And you compare that to video games, where you might have games where voice, the actual use of the voice, is totally inconsequential, and other games where the voice is absolutely integral, and then a whole lot of stuff in the gradient that goes between that.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's going to be any sort of acknowledgement of that in whatever agreement comes out.
So along those lines, not to change the subject at all, but to kind of extend it, in our audience are a lot of independent composers. What kind of union can they get involved in to protect themselves in case, like, I can see that, let's say this one is successful, voiceover actors start getting residuals, we're just going to pick that one because it's a big deal. There are a lot of people who are going to want that same that same benefit, and they're going to need some sort of union to protect them. But I don't play for the London Philharmonic, you know what I mean? How do I end up, or how does an outside independent composer end up in a union? What are the options there?
Well, there aren't too many options. There are options for musicians and performers, so the American Federation of Musicians, for example. But yeah, that's mostly for performance and conductors, not so much for composers. But actually, even stepping a little bit further, if there was some sort of agreement, and again, there are so many issues on the table with regards to whatever this agreement might be, but if residuals was part of it, I imagine, and other people have mentioned similarly, that perhaps video game developers in America would try to unionize as well. That's a really big sticking point for a lot of developers out there, because yes, at the very, very big companies, it is possible to have profit sharing and residuals and bonuses actually as part of the budget for these multinational, multi-million-dollar companies. But if all voice actors suddenly had this residual, then I think video game developers might react very strongly and actually consider unionizing, which has traditionally been one of those things that people thought there's no way that video game developers will ever unionize, because there's just so many young feisty whippersnappers coming out of college, coming out of high school. They're like, yeah, I'm going to make a game in Unity. I'm a hotshot programmer doing a C++, whatever. But a new agreement could be the first domino for other things in the whole game development world, I think.
Yeah, I mean, overtime hours, that was a major issue. What was that, EA Wife or something, who brought that up a long time ago? And
EA Spouse.
Oh, EA Spouse, that's what it was. And nothing came of, certainly something came of that, because EA started getting some bad rep, and that became an issue, and their reputation's a lot better now. But just being in games alone, you can I certainly have an arrangement with my wife that at any time I could call and say I'm here all night, so, and
the whole I don't know about how I don't know about how useful or practical it would be to have some kind of game developers union. However, I think one thing that could be good, that could come out of something like that, is definitely addressing the cultural issues of crunching, and that the sort of the one thing that sort of bothers me a lot about the game industry, especially for young people in the game industry, like young as in new players, new people to the industry, is that sort of kind of odd pride that sometimes people have with, oh yeah, we're crunching right now. Oh, I'm crunching so hard, man. We're just crunching away. It's like you realize that that's not good. It's sort of like yeah, I've made it to the game industry because I'm crunching. It's like a sort of like a trophy that you've achieved level 3 now because you're in the game industry and you're crunching and you're working all night. And of course, when it comes down to it, a lot of people get into the game industry because they love games, and therefore making games is going to be great fun, and you're going to love your work so much that you just, you get to, I don't know, like 6 o'clock at night, and you're sort of looking at what you're doing, and you're kind of in the flow, and you kind of, yeah, just a little bit more, I can do this, I'll get it done today, and and before you know it, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, it's like, oh, I'm really tired, but I just got to get this one more feature in, and because people are so passionate about what they're doing, which is fantastic, it's hard to sort of therefore rein that back and say, wait a moment, maybe I should rest, and maybe that's actually better for the project.
Well, I think something like this, though, would be, if enough people speak up, a change should be made. And there are companies out there who are doing it right. Like when I was with Neversoft, we had crunch. Crunch happens. But crunch never happened on Friday, which I thought was amazing. And I don't, at least the rule was that crunch never happened over 12 hours. So, sure, I spent a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday working 12 hours. It happened a lot. And but it was never, it wasn't a lot that had happened for 3 months straight. It would be a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks or something like that. And I know some of the guys at Neversoft and gals at Neversoft would say that they worked longer hours because it depended upon the department you were in. But the point I'm trying to make is that Neversoft knew it was going to happen, and they found a way to do it that was humane, was kind. It was still expected, but it wasn't, I don't think I ever worked a weekend at Neversoft, and I know that plenty of companies will crunch you from Monday to the next Monday, putting cots in a room for you, and so you really, I guess part of this is also making sure you know the company that you're going to go try to work for and seek out what their world is like, because it would be great if we were able to unionize and we were able to maintain some rights. But if you're hoping for that to be the catalyst of change in your work life, you might be waiting a long time. This really does speak honestly about how to interview at a place you're going to and look for the benefits, and something like what's happening right now is exposing some of the underbelly of the game industry that a person newly coming in should open their eyes to and make sure they ask about these things when they go for a job.
Yeah, the issue of crunch, together with the issue of age and relative years of history in the industry, is quite interesting, the way that relationship works, because I've noticed that young people, sort of like 22, 23, new graduates into a game company, fantastic. Yeah, I'm in the game industry, writing games, and they're really enthusiastic and passionate. Compared to, for example, me, I'm now 37, but I've been in, over the hill. But I've been sort of in the game industry, so to speak, since only for a relatively short time, maybe about 4 years or so. So I came into the game industry already married and already with a child. Now I have 2 children, so when it comes to sort of, crunching, it's like, screw that, I'm going home. I've got like 2 kids, and my wife is working hard at home with 2 children. Yeah. I'm really passionate about my work, of course, but just the stage of life that I am at the moment, entering into the industry, compared to people who have just come out of university, they're single, they're passionate, they're full of kind of ambition, and not to say that I'm not full of ambition, but it's just very interesting because, sure, why wouldn't I want to work on a weekend? Got nothing better to do. Even more the case, for example, with Vitae, where I'm working in Japan at the moment. In Vitae's case, a lot of these people have actually come from overseas to work at this company. So when it comes to the weekend, yeah, I guess you could go and take your camera and go and look at Osaka Castle, or go and do some sort of tourism kind of stuff. But if you've got work that's really fun and engaging and sort of very you just can't stop thinking about it because it's so much. You're just so passionate about it. Then inevitably, if a producer says, we have this milestone coming up on Monday, you don't have to work on the weekend. You don't have to. If you're going to, that's cool, but you don't have to. Yeah. Of course they're going to work on a weekend, I mean, of course they're going to do it because they come from overseas. There's, I guess, why not work on a weekend? It's fun work.
Yeah, I get it. And I was going to say the same thing when you were talking about people that romanticize crunch. I was going to say, as you get older, that changes. As more responsibilities happen in your life, that changes. There was a time when I crunched, and I didn't mind. And to tell you the truth, I actually kind of enjoyed crunch at Neversoft because we'd go get something to eat. It's a good chance to hang out with my buddies and get a dinner before the crunch hour started, and it was really kind of fun. And when you're working, an extra 4 hours after a good dinner, hanging out with your friends, you don't really feel it. But I don't want to do it every day for 3 months, sleeping in a cot, causing a divorce. I don't want any of that. And if there was some way to protect us from that, that would be wonderful. And if that came with residuals, that would be awesome. But gosh, good on you, voice actors, for standing up for your rights. I love it, and that's the kind of way change happens. But I wish there was some way to make that available to every person who's building games, because there is performance in art in every aspect of building a video game, down to writing the database code that needs to go into the game to make it work, to designing a web page so that people can talk badly about your video game. But it's it's everything. That's what I love about games, is we're building a piece of art that moves and incorporates everything from 2D art to 3D to music to film. It's just beautiful.
Now, Kyle, you mentioned earlier the question of whether composers have had any opportunities to unionize, since we face some of the same conditions, although on a freelance basis. And I believe historically there has never been a composers union in the official sense of CIO, AFL. I think that's the acronym, officially recognized union. There have been a couple of abortive attempts, and I think there was one as recent as maybe 5 years ago where composers were actually teaming up, no pun intended, with the Teamsters union in some strange way that I think you need to understand the legal basis for how unions are formed to make any sense of that. But like all these attempts, I think there are some fundamental economic issues in today's environment where composers are concerned that makes unionizing impractical. And I think at the heart of it is the fact that most composers in a pinch are replaceable. And the ones who are not replaceable, the John Williams, the Hans Zimmers, Thomas Newmans, they don't need
Shapiro's. Mike Shapiro's.
We might aspire to that one day. The ones who are brands do not need a union, because they essentially represent themselves, and as long as they've got a decent agent, they are, again, the demand for them is inelastic. But with most composers in a pinch, you could swap in somebody else and your game, franchise, or your TV show, etc., would not go down in flames. Mm-hmm. The recent case with, what was it, Halo, I think, shows that even a composer who's really associated with a franchise can lose that gig. So please correct me if I misidentified. It was Halo, right?
Well, it was for Destiny, but yeah, it's the same company, though.
Yes, it was Bungie. So in that sense, almost nobody is safe. And I think most of the people who were pushing for the union, in the case of composers, were probably mid-career guys who wanted to squelch competition from the young and eager composers who are willing to work for very little money or for free. And they essentially wanted to make it impermissible to hire somebody for a low rate, thus providing themselves a little bit of security.
Yeah. Well, but that's where, sorry to interject really quickly, but that's where I subscribe to this, and I'm sorry if I get political, I guess, on this, but we are talking about a political thing, is I believe in us understanding what each other are making from our gigs and sharing that information so that we can, with education, go into our next negotiation and know that this is the right price to charge for something. Because if you think about it, if we're being hired for something, that company, the game company, the developer, or whoever it's who's hiring us, they want to get us to do a lot of work for as little money as possible. That makes sense to me. And we want to do really great work and be paid well for it. And if we all sustain ourselves at an equal, or not a perfectly equal, but a level that has a little bit of fluctuation up in north and south of it, then we can actually get the industry used to paying this for composition and sound design, which is what Tommy Tallarico was talking about with Game Audio Network Guild, is everybody sharing this kind of information. And I think that's wonderful. But if we lived in that beautiful world, and I certainly try to, then unionizing that kind of condition becomes a moot point. You know, if people know what they're supposed to pay and they're charged what they should pay, that's great. But it doesn't stop, unfortunately, the mentality of I'm new, I got to get a gig, I'm going to charge as little as possible, and that might get you a gig or two, certainly, but it also can hurt you in the end when you try to raise your prices and they're expecting you to be the rate that they've paid you. Or you might have some run-ins with some fellow composers who are saying you should charge a lot more than you are, and that's not good for any of us if you charge too little, because this is hard work. It is hard work to compose, especially when you consider that there's temps involved usually, and they want you to sound like somebody who's already making millions of dollars and is world-renowned, and has been doing this for 30 years, and they're saying to a person, we want you to come in at a very low rate and sound as close to that as possible. That's a difficult thing to do.
So on that note, Game Sound Con, besides running the Game Sound Con, the conference, every November talking about audio and games, they also put out a survey. And they just put out the survey for this year, talking about the various ranges of compensation and different working conditions and contract terms. So from July to August of this year, they got 622 responses from various video game music composers and sound designers, of which 591 were deemed usable, and we get this nice little, how long is this thing? 22-page survey on things like compensation, what is the mean yearly salary, what's the median yearly salary, what do people get for freelance work, what's the mean project fee, how many years of experience do all those guys have? It's really cool to see guys willing to share all that information. I'm going to put a link here.
Yeah.
IRC channel.
Oh, wait, by the way, IRC is down.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I keep trying to get back in and it keeps crashing on me. Maybe it's on my end. It says error connecting to the IRC, though, and it keeps timing out.
Well, I'll put the link here, and you can add it to the show notes in
Will
a bit.
do. Thanks.
But yeah, if you're salaried or if you're freelance, even if you are starting out and you had absolutely no experience, I remember when I was doing that, I actually had absolutely zero clue what the heck I should charge, and so I just thought, well, I guess I should do it for free because I have zero experience, right? And like years of experience, it's like a little multiplier, right? Multiply by zero. But in fact, there's some ideas here, and they have some nice, pretty charts of, oh wow, that's mean project fees for large budget games, mean project fees for professionally produced casual games, for straight up indie other games. Typical fees when dealing with licensing agreements where a contractor will retain the rights. So there's some really good information in here. Whether you're a veteran or you're just starting out, I think it's cool to check out these charts and see where things are going. And probably the nice thing about this is it seems like things are going up. It actually noted that if you're a salaried employee, the mean yearly salary is a little over $80,000, which is about $10,000 more than what was reported as the mean yearly salary for 2014. So that seems pretty cool.
One thing I want to say here in my own pessimistic way, maybe I insult myself when I shouldn't, because I think it's very useful information, is I've had many offers that involve a bonus. I don't know how you guys feel about this. They'll say, okay, we don't want to pay you the annual salary that you want to make, and maybe we want you to take less money than your previous job, or we want you to make a regular move across. But they'll say, but we pay a bonus, and we want to add that in. So you're actually going to get a lot more. And I've negotiated away from that because I feel that, like, a signing bonus, okay, we'll talk about that. But bonuses are fickle, and they can disappear like that. And if you think about a developer that's underneath a publisher, the developer would, with full heart, intend to give you this bonus, but the publisher may take it away from them. And we put out million-dollar selling Guitar Hero games, and our bonuses just started disappearing. The further into Guitar Hero, the less bonus we got, to a point where we didn't get any bonuses. And we were still putting out a very successful game. So the publisher demands more money than the previous game if you're doing a repeated game. They say, hey, you hit this mark, now hit this mark. And when you start not hitting those marks that they set arbitrarily based off of, chairman and stuff like that, it can get kind of creepy, and the bonuses can start disappearing, and it's not your fault. You're still working very hard. So I give a lot of advice to people when they're coming into in-house jobs, or in a situation where a bonus is something that's promised. I say, don't do that. Argue that the bonus is not a guarantee unless it's a signature bonus and you're going to get it. And then don't forget that your bonus is also going to get taxed pretty heavily. I think it gets taxed more than a regular paycheck gets taxed. So they may say $500, and you may walk away with $240. So be careful when somebody is promising a bonus as part of your compensation, because that can go away. I just want to say that out loud.
No, that's definitely helpful, especially. Yeah, you're absolutely right about your wages are going to be taxed differently than other things.
Mm-hmm.
They'll give you a different tax document for this particular bit of income.
Yeah, so true. So true. I started saying it, and I heard my machine go bloop, and I thought it was you guys going, shut up, Kyle.
That was Mike is saying shut up, Kyle, in his own special way by just sort of walking out of the room.
He had to go. He warned us before the show that Mike is about to head somewhere, and he had to get on the road right away, so he said he was going to drop out just a little bit early. But, guys, we've got, 6 minutes left? So what's the new topic?
Well, I wanted to show a really quick thing, and I'm going to attempt to put this on IRC as well as in the chat.
Let me see if I can get back in. I don't want to miss it.
So basically, there's a company called MREF.
I'm getting in.
Well, actually, the company is called Play Without Boundaries, and they're making a product called the MREF, the Mobile Audio Development Reference Speaker. And it says right there, MREF does not simulate a phone speaker. It is a phone speaker.
It is a phone speaker. I know.
So, everyone these days is making games for touch devices, iPhones, iPads, Android. And it's inevitable if you're working in this that you're going to be monitoring all of your assets through a phone of some sort. And are you going to be doing it sooner or later in the asset creation process? I've always wished that I could have a speaker that was, literally an iPhone or an iPad, and it would plug into my audio interface that I use for sonar and just bam, give me the sound exactly how it would sound on that speaker. And there are various things that you can do. There's software that you can use for routing audio through virtual sound cards on your computer through Wi-Fi to the iPhone. There are specific iPad audio interfaces that you can actually buy. And that can be kind of complicated. You can do the Bluetooth thing.
Yeah.
But this is just a plain old speaker, and you plug it into your audio interface, and you're going to monitor things through what is actually an iPhone speaker, which is really cool. Just a nice, simple method of not having to mess with any other hardware and software with your beautiful DAW editing process that you've got for making audio.
And it's a good thing you're using Pro Tools, because everybody knows Pro Tools sounds better.
So check us out. It is $95, and that includes $6 shipping.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. It's still only available for pre-order right now, but I think it's supposed to be shipping later this year, and I'm really looking forward to getting it, just because man, people are always asking me about how things sound like on the iPhone, and I would love to just point them to this thing and say, you don't have to ask about tips and tricks. Just listen to it really quickly with your system that you've already got, and then make the decision yourself on what to do.
So I had a game I worked on, and now it was for Nintendo DS, and I think I've told this story way back in an earlier show. So it's got a life span that never mind. It was a joke, but I lost it. So what I had to do was I recorded distorted guitar, and once it got crunched down to the 10-bit they needed on the Nintendo DS, it sounded terrible. So I had to go back and redo the guitar parts, and I had to go through all of my distortions in this unit I have here called a GP 100, and crunch them down 10 bits at a time, and then hear it sound, and record, and crunch, and sound, and record, and crunch, until I found a distortion that sounded really good, and then I used that one. Had I had something like this directly be able to plug into my speakers on the Nintendo DS, now I know there's no bit crunching that would be the difference, but it would still be something that I could at least probably eliminated half of those distortion sounds right away. So this would be cool, because what I'll do is I'll plug it from my GP100 out into the speaker and just play a bunch of different patches and see which ones sound good on an iPhone speaker.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I'm surprised that something like this hasn't already been made, considering that we're already well into the world of, mobile phone gaming. So
yeah.
Cool that's finally out there.
That is very cool. Very good find, Vince. Thank you very much. So we have some news we got to share, but we can only allude to it right now, can't we?
Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit?
Cool.
What do you think? Alex, do you want to do it in your fancy accent so it sounds better?
How much should we allude?
We can say that it's going to happen.
Okay. No, I don't really know what to say. You better do it.
So we've been talking to sponsors, and we have support from one of them. So in the future, next episode, maybe the one after that, because it's up to us guys to decide when this kicks off, our show will change a little bit. You can look forward to some changes on the website and some exciting news about the sponsorship that we have up and coming, and we're very grateful for. But what does that mean?
It's not just.
I think one way of saying it is that we always say that we're really thankful to all you guys who come in during this hour and chat with us and have questions or contribute to these topics with their own thoughts. That's really great, and I think in the future we're probably going to try to thank you in perhaps an even more substantial way. So watch this space.
That's exactly it. We will be definitely returning the favor. That's exciting, and that's what I was going to say. How's that good for the viewers, because they will benefit from this. And so so thank you all. We've been working really hard to find some way of repaying you, and I think that we have come up with a good plan, and we've received a sponsor to contribute in that way. Hey guys, that's all I got.
Yeah, cool.
It's been good.
That's a great show. It's intense. It's intense.
Yeah.
Everybody listening in the car will be at work before they know it.
Well, they will be in this time zone. That is, because I think over there everybody's going home, right?
Yeah, well, they'll listen to it at a later date when it's on the U of the tubes. Speaking of those, please like us on YouTube. Please tweet us on Twitter and thumbs up us on Facebook.
Isn't there like a thumbs down and like a different emotive things coming to Facebook soon? You're gonna have to adjust that spiel, Carl.
Now, why would you bring that up? We don't want them to thumbs down us on.
That may not be thumbs down. It may be like a like what do you give us one of these on Facebook?
Hang loose.
Hang loose on Facebook. We could do double negative episodes, and then when they thumbs us down, it's actually a thumb up, right?
Sounds good.
Okay. With that, I'm leaving. So thanks, everybody. Bye, guys. I'll see you next week.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.